Jim Collison, we're live again from Infotec 2017. Been doing interviews all day. I'm here with Todd Bleeker. Todd, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, you bet. I enjoy it.
Yeah, tell us, let's get a little background on you. So first of all, where are you from? Who you work for? Those kinds of things.
You bet. Todd Bleeker, and I've been working with SharePoint since the turn of the century.
Awesome.
And so that's been my everyday, day in and out. That's what I eat, sleep, and breathe.
Yeah.
Right? So I currently work for RSM. RSM is a consulting firm.
Okay.
It's headquartered all over the world, but I happen to be in West Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh, okay. Not too far. Couple
Not
hours.
Too far. Yep.
Couple hours east for those who aren't familiar with the Omaha
there
Des Moines geography, right? So cool. So did you come up this morning or did you come up last night?
I came up last night to set up the hands-on lab.
Oh, great.
Because I'm a CIE certified, which means customer immersion experience. The idea is that if you can get people to log into Office 365 and experience it themselves, they can get the aha and go, wow, I really need this.
Yeah.
Not that I'm selling Office 365, but that's where SharePoint is going, right? From on-premises to SharePoint Online.
Now, Todd, wait a minute. So Office 365, isn't that just like Word and Excel? And I mean, come on, how sexy is Office?
So let's call that Office Online. And actually, you'd be pretty amazed. The browser-based version of Word and Excel have really come a long way. The other day, I was complaining. I was going, yeah, I never use that because it doesn't have Format Painter. Turns out it does. I didn't know. But that's Office Online.
Right.
Office 365 is much, much broader spectrum of things. Right. I manage a user group in Des Moines called the Microsoft Online User Group. So we cover anything and everything Office 365, right? Everything that Microsoft does online. We touch a little bit on Azure, but for the most part, we're focused on productivity tools.
Yeah. When we think about Office 365, really two different ways to approach that, right? One is through a consumer version. The other's through an enterprise version, right? How different are those, or is it all the same thing?
Oh, good question. So think of the consumer version as ad-based and limited functionality.
Okay.
And there's actually 4 spectrums that I talk about. The consumer version, like, hey, I just want a live.com email, right? And that's it. Then there's the home productivity suite that lets me have actual Office desktop applications, or the small business that lets me get a little bit further, get my SharePoint Online plan, get some additional functionality beyond what I would get as just a home user, all the way then to enterprise, where you're talking about PBXs and ISBN and worldwide connection and connectivity and the entire suite, like mobile device management in the Intune product and so forth.
Yeah, from a consumer standpoint, when we think about at home, I want Word, Excel. If I'm going to buy Office 365, do I stick with kind of the home versions, or are there? Because I think it's $99 a year to be on Office 365 as a consumer.
You can do it for $69.95,
okay,
right? Or $6.99 a month.
Yeah,
they got the Netflix model down.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
So
Adobe does that too. So
yes, they do.
Yeah,
yep. My wife is training on the Adobe suite, so I'm very familiar with that as well. I would say that if you're going to have Word, then or Outlook, because Outlook is like the hub and of many of our communications, then it makes sense to look at Office 365 because you can get a plan where you're just using the browser, and if you're comfortable with that, it's cheaper. But if you are really wanting that desktop version for about the same money that you would have spent to own the suite back 5 years ago, you can rent it and always have the latest version. Always have that help desk right around the corner. You can contact them and they can give you answers. Things that were harder to do in the past are now relatively easy compared to yesteryear because of the cloud.
Yeah. And I know on the consumer or on the business side, when I think about some of the business plans, and I think as an MVP, we're on the E3 or one of those plans.
I think you're right.
We also see a lot of benefit when it comes to some of those other apps. And this is kind of what I want to talk to you a little bit about. I think everybody's familiar with Word and Excel and the PowerPoint, but there's other things like Sway, and there's other things like there's a new video offering that's coming in. When we think about the most underutilized apps maybe that you think are great, what would you point out as those? What are some of those apps that are really not being used inside the productivity suite?
You bet. In fact, my session that went on at 1:15 today, I covered 27 such apps.
Holy moly! All right.
Things from bookings, the ability to have someone outside of your organization come to a web page that allows them to then book time with you or your staff. You approve it, they get notifications, you have a universal calendar. It's part and parcel of Office 365 business plan, right? Or another one might be Staff Hub for those organizations that have deskless workers. They can put them into shifts and then allow those deskless workers to use their phone to ask for a shift swap, or to ask for time off, or to just have conversations with management, or to get access to the manual that explains what the dress code is and those kinds of things, right? So for those workers, Staff Hub works really well. And there's so many, right?
No, keep going. You're doing great.
There's one called Gig Jam, which lets me have the app on my phone and you have the app on your phone. So you have to have the app.
Yep.
But if we both have the app, like if we both had WhatsApp, right? So if we both got Gig Jam, then I can grab content out of my repository, whether that's Salesforce.com or that's Outlook, or maybe it's Dynamics 365 or some other CRM, 100 different vendors. I can grab that content, whatever I circle, you can see. Inside of the circle, if I click an X, then I've redacted it and you can't see it, and then I share it with you. So it's partial file content sharing, real time with another individual. They can then provide decorative feedback to me, notes on it and stuff to tell me what they thought of my redacted content. This is better than maybe a screen sharing in that they don't see the full document. I didn't send them the whole Word document or the whole PDF, only the sections of it that I wanted to share with them. So Gig Jam.
Is that like, so if I'm bringing it up on my phone, am I just using?
You're just using your finger.
Using the finger to.
Yep. Say I want this to go. I don't want this. I don't want this.
Interesting.
Scroll down. I want this to go.
That's pretty
send.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's available at the business level.
At the business level.
Okay. Good.
Right.
What else? What else is cool? While you're thinking, let me ask you. Skype for Teams just came out.
Absolutely.
Available on the business side. Today, internal only. It sounds like eventually they'll open that up so you can allow external. They're billing it as a Slack competitor.
Agreed.
What are your thoughts?
Think of this. So one of the core components of Office 365 today is that Office 365 group. So the Office 365 group brings together components from Exchange, Calendar, Conversation, components from SharePoint, in that we've got a place for documents and the planner so that we can have a plan. All of those come together in a bundle, but the access to it is only browser-based. So Teams is really just putting a user interface on top of that that's hip and cool and lets me put on stickers and lets me have real-time video sharing, or the ability for me to have a conversation real time. It all still gets stored down in the Office 365 group. So if I want to interact with that same group of people through the browser, I can. But the idea of Teams gives me an app that's specifically for keeping our teams up to speed. Right. You mentioned Sway. I really love Sway. It's really not a PowerPoint replacement, but it's cool if you want to create a continuously scrolling horizontal or continuously scrolling vertical page that you want to share with others. We talked about how docs.com is a place where we can take those documents and post them out where they can be viewed by the public anonymously. So a place to publish, like a MySpace, if you will, right, where I can put my content, whether that's documents or Sways or an Office Mix. An Office Mix is a PowerPoint add-in that lets me embed video and embed audio, like I can record an MP4 of my PowerPoint playing to create a full experience of a video that somebody could watch from PowerPoint. That's pretty slick. So those are some ideas of the kinds of things that are not necessarily commonly known.
Yeah. And why do you think they're underutilized? I mean, what is it, just an education deal, or is it, I mean, what's the, certainly Microsoft acquired many of them and have blended that in, right? But what are you finding in the market? And then once people do find out about them, what kind of adoption are you seeing with them?
So I'm going to answer the first question.
Yep.
Why is the adoption not necessarily there? Twofold. Number one, threefold. Number one, they only just released a lot of these products. A lot of them weren't there yesterday, right? They just came out in December or January. They're brand new. Staff Hub came out in February, right?
Okay.
Secondly, they're 1.0 releases, right? So they have core functionality, but they don't necessarily have deep functionality. That'll come in time, right? And then I think thirdly, a lot of people are just trying to get their head around what they've already gotten access to with Exchange Online, and maybe delved a little bit into OneDrive or SharePoint, where they're like, okay, I have enough learning that I have to do, that they're not ready to pick up on that next piece. And not only that, but we probably already have established a way to do team communication, whether it's water cooler or email. It's hard to have that culture change swiftly, but it'll come in time.
Yeah.
It'll definitely come.
Yeah, so we are moving at Gallup. We're moving on to Office 365 in the cloud. Are you seeing in the work that you're doing, you have a users group in Des Moines and stuff, and I know Microsoft's making that, I mean, they're forcing the trend a little bit, but how's the adoption? Are people moving? Are we seeing enterprises start to move from the on-prem days of Exchange and, loading Office and some of those kinds of things? Are we making a dent? Is it getting any better?
So surprisingly, faster than expected, actually. By now, the expectation was 25 to 30% of the sort of movers and shakers in the world would have some adoption. But I believe that that's more like 65%. I don't have the number on my fingertips,
Sure.
95% of all statistics are made up on the spot. So
Totally.
I don't exactly know, but I know that they're doing way better than they expected to do at this place in the game. A lot of companies even just, their organization said, we're not doing cloud. No way, never, it's not going to happen, right? But now they're saying, well, I've got several clients that had that hard-nosed approach, and now they're saying, well, we'd really like to rethink that, because there's some truly compelling things. And why do we want to host our own servers? That's not our business. Our servers are kind of in our way, and they're crashing, and we got problems, and now we got to upgrade them, and we got to go through the, so let Microsoft host it. We do that kind of thing with all sorts of things in our lives, where we let an expert handle that part of it, right? So since we can now secure our content, I didn't really talk about Lockbox, but that's a functionality that's kind of interesting. The notion that you have a key to your data that Microsoft uses to secure that information, to encrypt it, so that they don't even know how to decrypt your information. So if some government body comes along and says, hey, give us Gallup's data, Microsoft's going to, here you go, right? We've done what we were required to do. You can't sue us, but it's all encrypted, so you're going to have to talk to them to get the key. Right? Lockbox is a pretty cool functionality that didn't take a lot of effort necessarily, but satisfies that problem. Is my data safe? Yeah. Because even if it's breached, it's encrypted, so nobody can do anything with it.
Right. No, and I think addressing some of those issues, that's the problem with cloud, is a lot, where's my data? And we've got some issues with where the data can be stored based on our client, right? It's not, we don't dictate some of that. We're a Yammer user too before. So part of our coaching community at Gallup uses Yammer. And that, of course, has made its way into the infrastructure. Have you done much work on the Yammer side? Are you familiar with the Yammer platform?
I am. So Yammer's not my favorite tool. I had some issues with the Yammer team believing that they were the only people in the world that knew anything with their A/B testing and the whole approach that they brought. But, they've done Microsoft a good service in bringing Microsoft forward. They were really the catalyst for why Microsoft began to understand bi-weekly releases, better documentation, those kinds of things. And the Yammer team is innovating. It's a whole lot better tool than it was even just 2 years ago.
Good.
Much easier to see what you've read, much easier to see what you are, what's unread, much easier to see the thread of things so it's a better product. And in fact, it's also got SharePoint embedded in it. I'm a SharePoint fan through and through. There's no two ways about that. And so I think that that's a part of making those tools work together. That they're going to, Yammer's adopting Office 365 groups as well.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be a nice that'll be a nice capability there too.
Okay. Yeah, we are actually breaking we're breaking our current version of Yammer. We've been on Yammer for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So we come over from the
true Yammer
original
days.
Yammer days, and some things didn't get done exactly right, and so we're actually going to break it off and then rebuild it from scratch. And so we've got a little bit of work to do. There's no good porting tools unless you're aware of one.
No, I don't know.
It gets a little messy. So we've got a small enough community. We're going to break that off and then bring them in.
So why return to Yammer instead of going to Teams?
Well, that's the question we have to ask at this point. To be honest with you, we need to do some evaluation on those products yet.
So one of my slides talked about the dozen ways that you can have a group conversation today in Office 365, and the fact that people need to decide. Here's where we're going to collaborate. Here's where we're going to have our. Are we going to use Skype for Business? Are we going to be using because Skype for Business is becoming quite embedded. It's on the right-hand pane of your mail app, right? So you're reading your email. Hey, let me just have a quick conversation. It's part of OneNote now. Skype for Business is doing pretty well. Or do I go more traditional and just have, hey, we're going to continue to use email because it works well for us? Or do we want to go social, right? Do we want to take on the Yammer challenge?
Well, what we like about Yammer is it's social media first, right? It's more threaded conversations. It's more like Facebook.
It is.
We have thousands of coaches communicating, and we have found the teams. That's why we didn't move to Slack, to be honest with you, is because thousands of people in Slack don't work very well.
No, it doesn't.
It's not really set up that way.
Well, and with thousands of people, you can segregate those conversations into groups pretty easily. But again, Office 365 groups does have something there because you don't have to put everybody in one place, right? So
well, and we always try to manage it from a scalability standpoint, and not having, with Slack, you always had to have kind of this Slack administrator kind of making sure things are done right in the right place, and otherwise it gets pretty unruly. With Yammer, we approached it on the other side of saying, no, we'll set up defined groups to begin with.
There you go.
And then pretty much restrict, and they could start their own groups if they want.
So pave the sidewalks first.
Get
all that structure in place.
Set some prescribed, kind of direct.
I have a question for you. I kind of have a little bit of opinion here, but I think it's subjective. What do you think of the bots?
Oh, the new bots inside of Skype?
Skype and inside of Teams?
Yeah, I've only used them on Skype so far. Well, we're not using some of that functionality just yet. We are rolling out a lot of that functionality actually coming up this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see.
That'll be cool, sure.
Going to turn some new things on, and we're going to slowly implement one thing at a time as we roll that out. However, bots has full capability inside of Skype now, and there's, I don't know, 14 bots?
There's not a lot. But
there's a Valentine's Day bot, and there's a there's a happy birthday bot, whatever. I'm making those up. But interesting. I think we're still at a point where they're trying to be useful. I'm not sure. I did have one, like I could put in, I wanted to follow the Kansas City Chiefs, right, during football season. I could put, there's a sports spot. I could put Kansas City Chiefs. Anytime something would show up in the news or in the media, it would send me a note on Skype. Now, that's actually pretty helpful if I want to follow that team.
So it's really a matter of, can we find interesting things to do with them?
Right.
Because so honestly, I'm not very much of a Echo, Siri, Cortana kind of a person. But I can absolutely see in a business context, if somebody's asking about something that we can hear sort of, and we can respond to without a human having to be there. I could see HR uses. I could see uses where maybe even competitiveness could be aided if we were sort of not monitoring exactly, but the bot is paying attention to those conversations, right?
Well, I'd love it if I could feed my FAQs into the bot. If I could feed, if it could follow, if I could even feed some of the conversations into the bot, and it would do some machine learning to be smart enough to answer some of the basic questions, right? That would be, I get questions through our Facebook group and through our Yammer group, and they're the same questions all the time. Right?
You say, hey, go look at the thing that's already been published.
Ask the bot first. There's a story of a college professor who used to put a teddy bear outside his office, and during office hours, you had to ask the teddy bear the question first. So you had to be committed to the question and know how to phrase it.
I like it.
Right?
I like it.
Some of those kinds of things, too, where you kind of think it would be, I think, people could get faster service if they could ask the bot, and it would pump back information to them. That's an area where I think bots can actually be really, really helpful.
Fabulous.
We're in a business like that where we have a lot of information. I think of all the StrengthsFinder data that we have and all those things about people, and bots could be helpful. Do you see in your role, is Microsoft committed to rolling those, to continue to improve those bots?
I think
better?
so, but I think it'll depend upon adoption.
Okay.
The products that I'm most excited about are Power Apps and Flow
Sure.
for building robust, responsive applications on the web that sit on top of hundreds of platforms, including SharePoint, right? But also Salesforce.com or Twitter or whatever, what have you. And then, so Power Apps and Flow. I really like Power BI, especially not necessarily from a BI, traditionally a BI perspective, but more like from, I want to be able to present some data over here in a powerful visualization on a modern SharePoint page, right? So it's responsive, it's available, it's good. So I think that that's an up and comer. SharePoint framework. Hey, this is a brand new platform.
Is it? I mean, SharePoint's gotten just beat up over the last 15 years, right? It's never worked very well. It's been okay. We've actually adopted it at Gallup and have done pretty well with it, but it's not everybody's favorite.
Sure.
Is the new stuff better?
So let's put it like this. From 2003 onwards to 2016, SharePoint had an infrastructure that was all server-based.
Right.
And basically it automated what a developer would build into a component and put it in a gallery for you to add it to a page. Right. So
very gallery-based.
Very gallery-based.
Yeah.
That model isn't necessarily changing. What's changing is that we can create components now that will work in Office 365 or on premises. And those new those new web parts will work client-side only, which means that you don't have to rely on a server-side deployment anymore. It's not a sandbox solution nightmare. It's not an app or add-in nightmare. This is a brand new platform that didn't exist before, using a tried and true method of empowering the business user to assemble the Legos to build the dashboard. The reason that SharePoint gets in trouble, though, is because people try to do stuff with it that it wasn't intended to do. So like if we're dashboarding, if we're collaborating, if we're using search, we're really leveraging SharePoint's strong suit. If we're trying to build a relational database with, you know, custom components that cobble together some DOM manipulation, we're misusing it, right? We're not doing what we should have been doing with it altogether. And I still think SharePoint search is just amazing, right? Not only can we index SharePoint content, but we can index content from pretty much anywhere on the planet. If it's got, you know, a web-oriented, maybe RESTful endpoint, we can index it.
Sure.
So pretty powerful stuff can come out of search if we leverage that, if we implement it correctly.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to, I've on my Office 365 at home, I kind of mess around with some of that technology, and so it'll be fun to work through some of those pieces. Anything else you covered in your session you think you should highlight to the folks that are listening? We covered a lot of stuff.
If you go to j.mp/demystifying Office 365, okay? Demystifying is capital D because it's case sensitive. It's a j.mp URL. So demystifying is capital, Office is capital, no spaces. So j.mp/demystifying Office 365. You can get my slide deck.
Oh, good.
So you can go take a look at all the stuff I talked about.
Cool. Good. Tell us a little bit about your company again. How would folks contact you if they had questions that they wanted to address to you?
Good question. So I work for RSM. It used to be called McGladrey, and the M was McGladrey.
Okay.
Okay, so I say it's really still McGladrey.
Okay.
RSM.
Sure.
It's an international firm. Mostly they're tax and audit. I work in the consulting side of the business. And I specifically work in ECM, the Enterprise Content Management. That said, Office 365 is my bailiwick. That's what I'm really focused on. And to a lesser extent, Azure, right? Because you have to know that in order to really make the best use of Office 365. If they wanted to get a hold of me, they just use my name, Todd Bleeker, TODDBLEEKER.
All one word? No
Todd
spaces?
Bleeker.
No underlines, no dots?
I'm at Todd Bleeker at LinkedIn, at Facebook, Todd Bleeker at hotmail.com, Todd Bleeker at outlook.com.
Awesome.
You can get a hold of me if you know my name. Search for Todd Bleeker on the internet. I wrote 9 books about, I wrote 8 books about SharePoint and 1 book way back at the turn of the century about content management server.
You keep saying turn of the century. That makes me feel really old.
Well,
by
it
the
is
way.
2017, Jim. So
Todd, thanks for taking the time to be with us today. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.